Welcome once again to the Radical Imagination. I'm your host, Jim Vrettos. I'm a sociologist at John Jay College here in New York City. The late, great American sociologist Seymour Martin Lipset once referred to the idea of American exceptionalism as a double-edged sword. The idea that America was a unique experiment that supposedly explains what America is all about and what makes us different and proud to be Americans is certainly true. But any nation or culture could argue the same about its own experience in history. We at the Radical Imagination believe that America's unique message is rooted in the American Revolution, the abolitionist movement, the labor movement, the Vietnam anti-war movement, the suffragette movement, the welfare rights movement, the civil rights movement, the Attica Rebellion, the Standing Rock Resistance, and countless other attempts by ordinary Americans who collectively rose up and helped to defy dominant authorities by speaking truth to power. As the masses become a force in American political culture, it opens up the possibility of America reaching its full democratic potential, offering a true alternative to business as usual. By a system run by a self-perceived, entitled power elite whose politics of fear, greed, and militarism fuels a profound cynicism and destruction of resources and people in this country and around the world. My guest today is one of those people who make America exceptional in the positive sense that Lipset argued was necessary. He was the owner of 3 startup small businesses in Manhattan in the mid-1970s, founded the Coalition for Fair Business, the first citywide advocacy group fighting to stop high rent increases. He was appointed to the first mayoral small business advisory task force by Mayor Dinkins, and founded the Coalition to Save Small Businesses in 2008. So welcome, Stephen Null, to the Radical Imagination. It's great to have you here, and can't wait to talk to you about what's going on in New York City in particular, about the domination of real estate interests, business interests, controlling our communities and small businesses. But first, tell us a little bit about your background. How did you come to New York? Are you native New Yorker?
No, I'm from West Virginia.
West Virginia.
Came up here in the 70s and started a health food store with my brother. And
was that Fertile
restaurant? Earth? Yes, that was it, the Fertile Earth.
I ate there. 107th Street.
That's it. That's exactly right. We started that, and
it's a great place.
Yeah, it was very successful, and then we were one of the early victims of the real estate speculation, where there was a massive increase of rents. That when you're in business and you get hit with a 100% to 300% increase in your rent, it could put you out of business, as it is still doing today, all this time later. And when I lost one of my businesses, I wanted to do something about it. So I reached out, and at that time, the councilwoman was Ruth Messenger, and she was introducing a law to give rights to the small business owners, and it was actually a form of commercial rent control that used to be enacted under Mayor LaGuardia. For 18 years, New York businesses were under commercial rent control legislation, and the landlords could not raise the rents above a certain percentage, and that saved them.
Our rent control now for tenants, right?
Something like that. It was, but the idea was that the speculators were raising the rents and not caring if the business owners survived or not. The only profit, making as much as they could, and LaGuardia didn't stand for it. They enacted legislation, and it was almost impossible to evict a business, small business in New York for 18 years. And he kicked the speculators out. And they stayed out for another 20 years. And then Mayor Koch opened the door again with the former Speaker Peter Vallone to the real estate speculation. And that's when we came along, the business owners united, and we started a group called the Coalition for Fair Business Rents. And we didn't support the commercial rent control for a couple reasons. One is that it didn't protect everybody.
That Koch was
Mayor.
implicating and trying to impose.
No, he tried to. Mayor Koch wanted to stop any regulation of the speculators, because once you give rights to the owners and you regulate the speculators, they will leave the marketplace. Because one thing that speculators love besides huge windfall profits is no regulation, allowing them a free hand to do whatever they're going to do. Abuses,
whatever the market.
They are the market.
They are the market,
and that's why we decided to do this law. But we didn't agree with the Councilwoman Messenger at the time to bring back the Mayor LaGuardia's commercial rent control law for a couple of reasons. One is that the legislators back in those days were honorable people. They weren't influenced by the real estate or spatial interests. They were good legislators, honest people with integrity, and you didn't have that under Vallone and Koch and all of these corrupt political machines in New York City. So we didn't want them setting the rates. It would be a disaster. The second thing is that the commercial rent control didn't protect everybody, and our foundation of our groups were arts community. We had artists who were being thrown out, and that bill didn't cover them. Manufacturing, it didn't cover a lot of the people, and so what we did is we formed our own law, and it took us a couple years, and we put together a bill that was based on arbitration. No government interference, arbitration, no caps. There were triggers that if the landlord raised the rent a certain percentage, it would trigger an arbitration process.
This was 1980.
84.
84.
And so Ruth Messenger dropped her bill and picked up our bill in 1986, June 1986, and so that's where the battle really began. And every business association in New York City went to City Hall and begged for relief from all this speculation. And pharmacists, it wasn't just mom and pop stores, it was pharmacists, it was whole industries. They were just, the speculation was destroying it. And in the end, they had a vote on our bill on December 1st, 1988, and we lost 4-3 because Peter Vallone flipped one of the sponsors of the bill, and from Queens, a councilman, Sheldon Loeffler, and he had promised to vote for the bill, and he voted no. And that was it. And from that day on, the real estate kept getting stronger and stronger. I mean, they literally, Koch and Vallone, opened the door for real estate to take over New York City's economy. And that's where we are today.
We have, what restrictions at all do we have?
Oh, no, you can do, right now, when you're a commercial business, you have no rights at all. None. Zero. And your future is in the hands of the landlord 100%. And it is a job killer, because no one who has a business is going to hire anybody or expand knowing that when their lease is up, they may not even be in business. It's a job killer in that aspect. It's capital improvements. If people want to fix up their business or something, no one's going to do it.
Why should you?
Well, actually, if you fix up your business, you're going to probably get a higher increase in your rents. So it's a terrible situation.
How long are the leases usually?
Well, there's another factor also, is that historically, the longer the lease, the better it is for job creation and for survival of the business and for growth, because it gives you an opportunity to borrow money, to expand, to hire people, to train them, and these leases have gotten shorter. Now, what's happening now in poor communities is that the speculators are coming in and they're actually giving these businesses month-to-month leases, especially the immigrant-owned. And the reason why is because they want to be ready if a big franchise comes along. They can just say, you want this place?
Swoop in there.
30 days and it's yours. And also, they're selling property. There's so much real estate money coming from all over the world that the value of property is going up. People are selling their property, and they don't want the commercial tenants to have long-term leases to interfere in this. They can tell these new buyers, I'll clear this out completely. And we also have an issue about warehousing. That what they're doing is that you may have a business that's been there for 30, 40, 50 years. And the landlord will say, get out, and then they'll leave it empty waiting to either sell the business or have a big franchise pay, or a bank or somebody pay a ridiculous amount. So the issue today, I mean, it's a terrible structure. It's anti-jobs, it's anti-growth, and another factor that people aren't talking about is these leases are so small that it opens a door for abuse because these landlords or their agents in many cases can go in and extort cash from the mostly immigrant owners because they have no option. Either you pay me 30, 40, 50,000 cash, or I'm going to throw you out. And this has been documented. This was actually documented. There was a study done in 2009 by the U.S. Latin Chamber of Commerce of Hispanic business owners, which are the largest owners of small businesses are immigrants, and the largest number of immigrants owners are Hispanic. And they own at least 62 to 65% of all the businesses in New York City. So they did a study, and one of the questions that was asked was, have you ever been extorted? And 1/3 of the owners, Hispanic, said yes. It was a regular thing. And Sung Soo Kim, who's the leader of the Korean Small Business Service Center, he did a survey of his members, and it was something like 70%. But the Bodega Association did a survey of just bodegas, and it was 85%. So it was a rampant problem, and that's what happens when
you're talking about extortion in the form of what, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000?
Oh, it's now. It used to be 5 years ago, just to renew your lease was 20,000. And now that's up now, the 40, 50,000. But if you want to sell your business, then everybody has to go to the landlord. It's another reason that the landlords don't give long-term leases, because if you ever want to sell your business, then you have to go to the landlord to renewal for longer leases for 10, 15 years, because the person who buys a business they're not going to buy it unless they have time to recoup the cost and to make a profit. So
what does this do, Steve, to civic life?
To
the nature of the community.
Well,
to people having a stake in the city and in their lives.
Let me say that most of the viewers have read stories about a business that's been there that was rent gouged out. They had to leave, and they probably could name 5 or 6 of their own businesses that they shopped, that the business owner had to close. Good businesses, hardworking people, offering good services at reasonable prices, but they just couldn't stay because of the landlords. And the problem is that there's been so much focus on the store owner and the business itself that nobody is looking at the workers, the impact upon the workers, the impact upon the businesses who stay. What does that mean to the community? And I'm going to tell you what it means. The consequences of this out of control rent gouging. Number one is it has the biggest factor on wages, because these business owners have to pay this increase in rents. So where does it come from? You raise your prices, but you also have to lay off people. And most cases you can't give any raises because you have to pay your landlord, because we're talking about huge increases. And that's the biggest impact, is this impact upon the wages and jobs creation. almost no business at all can create new jobs because they have no future. If you were to ask the question, who has the most influence over the future of the workers? The answer is not the employer. The answer is his landlord. His landlord has the decision, final, complete, of whether any worker even has a job.
And add the dimension of the political leaders who are controlling the landlords.
Well, it's the other way around.
Sorry.
The landlords are controlling our political leaders. There lies the problem. But I want to finish just a little bit of the consequences. So that's consequence. Main consequence is the future of the workers, their wages. But it's a pathway. These small businesses are the pathway and have been for generations for low-income families to move up the social ladder. That job entry, that first job, is always critical. And that pathway is being destroyed, absolutely destroyed. I mean, here, the idea that you have a community that's an immigrant community or a poor community, and the only jobs available are being eliminated because the landlord needs all this greedy money. Mm-hmm. And he's willing to leave the business empty. It is shameful that one day you have a business that somebody invested their life savings in, people have jobs, and then because of a landlord, it's empty. And people are looking for work, but all these people that were in there now have to struggle to feed their families. It's the worst possible scenario. And yet, having said that, these politicians who will say at election time, our businesses are the backbone of our economy, they give our community character, then you have to ask, well, why are you allowing a handful of landlords to destroy it? Because that's exactly what's happening. You can't walk down any neighborhood in the city without seeing empty businesses, for rent signs up all over the place, and every merchant there terrified of when their leases are up. It is the worst situation possible for jobs, for growth. I mean, it's just terrible, and yet they're doing nothing. Now, if you ask, and that's where I come in, what can you do? This is what the merchants themselves did 30 years ago. We found a solution to the problem, a simple, fair, easy solution, and we gave it to the legislators. Here is a solution that will stop the speculators, that'll save the jobs, and that's all you have to do is pass it. And they couldn't do it. They could not do it. To this day, they will not do it. And what that solution is it's very simple. You give the store owners rights to protect their investment, to protect the jobs of their workers. And when a lease is up, right now they have no rights. Under our bill, it's called the Small Business Jobs Survival Act. And if people want to look up it on our website, it's called savenycjobs.org. There's a copy of the bill along with the history of this whole issue about the government failing. But
the political route this bill needs to take is what?
Well, let me just finish the one thing about the bill.
Okay.
The bill, and because it'll explain, it'll help the people to explain to confront the elected officials, is why aren't you giving the small businesses rights? Why does only the landlord, who's a multimillionaire, is the only person that has rights, and you will not give rights to the person who needs it to protect his family and the workers and the community? Because there's another consequence, and I don't want to regress, but there is a consequence that if a business stays, the prices go up. Okay, the prices have to go up to pay for the rent. So there's all these negative consequences, and this nonsense, and I'll use the word nonsense, that gentrification means that these businesses' days are up. That, well, it's just a changing time. That, this is part of the cycle of the economics. That businesses change, neighborhoods change, and you're being thrown out because you can't keep up, is the biggest myth in the world.
You're not being competitive enough.
Yeah, you're not being competitive enough.
Not working hard enough.
Let me tell you something. This will surprise you. Most of these businesses will actually do more, make more money if the community changes and gets better. But they have to have reasonable cost in order to make changes in their property, their business, to add staff, to do what's necessary. These are not stupid people. These are hardworking people and they're savvy, but the landlords are not giving them the chance to benefit. They go into poor neighborhoods that everybody abandoned, and they work and they sacrifice. They even put their lives on the line in some of these neighborhoods. And yet when the neighborhood starts to change, they have to go. Why do they have to go? They're smart people. They're willing to work, but they won't be given an opportunity to work because the landlords want huge profits. And that's the fact. And they hide behind gentrification, because when we started, there was no gentrification in New York. When we first wrote this bill, there was none. There was no gentrification. They went into neighborhoods and they raped them, absolutely raped them. And every time that the people were in the media, they would defend themselves saying this is gentrification. Well, don't believe it. So anyway, here's getting back to the political aspect.
Yes.
We have a solution.
Right.
You give these people rights. And how this works is very simple. That when your lease is up, no longer can the landlord just, here's what I want, take it or leave it. They can't do that. You get a 10-year lease. A 10-year lease, a right to renewal, and the landlord has to negotiate equally with you the terms. If you can't reach agreement on the terms, then you go to an arbitrator. Now this arbitrator is shared, the cost is shared by both parties. The government has nothing to do with this. The taxpayers have nothing to do with this. This is between the two parties. And you go to an arbitrator and there's a set of guidelines. And believe it or not, these were the same set of guidelines that were used successfully for 18 years.
LaGuardia.
Under LaGuardia, right. And so this is not something new. In other words, some of this stuff is basic. Yeah. Like if a landlord says, I want to raise your rent 50%. Well, okay, fine. What's the interest rate at the banks? What's the cost? Where do you justify raising my rent 50%? Well, that's the market. No. You have created the market. Right. You left a business empty for a year.
Without my input.
Right. There are businesses that showed up at your empty store and was offering a reasonable rent, and you wouldn't take it. Yeah. You manipulated the market. Why should I have to take it?
So-called free market.
Free market baloney. It's called manipulated free market for the landlords. That's what we have in New York City. So anyway, that's our bill, and it will work. It worked before, because even under the commercial rent control, most of it was arbitration. If the landlord and the tenant agreed to arbitration, they could go to arbitration. And the point being simple. If a landlord cannot evict somebody, then they can negotiate. If you take that power away from them, as long as they have that power,
why should they?
Of course. And I'll bring this up because this is very interesting. Is that Mayor Koch, in order to stop this bill, he set up a phony committee. We called it the Limousine Committee because everybody showed up at the meetings in limousines, and it's supposed to be a small business retail study commission, and it was made up of presidents of Wall Street firms, banks, real estate, Macy's president. I mean, it was stacked. And they knew that they weren't going to recommend anything. So there was one person you may know, Ron Schiffman, from Pratt. He founded the Pratt community thing. We managed to get him on the committee, and then there was one other member, but it was a stacked committee, rigged. And what they come up with was to give the businesses 1 year to move. At first there was non-binding mediation, which is a waste. I mean, it's what's a non-binding mediation is like
walk away from
nothing. I mean, it's all right. It means you have to mediate, but that doesn't mean you have to accept anything.
Exactly.
You have 1 year extension of your lease, at which time, at 15% increase,
Okay.
and at which time you agree not to go to court but to move. So what that allowed you to do, I mean, we called it the landlord's bill because it was the landlord's bill. It was written by RIBNY, the real estate lobby, and basically it kept the status quo, that all the rights remain with the landlord, and that was it. Now, that's what they recommended, and then the members of the committee wrote a minority report saying that they recommended our bill. That this was, you had to give these people rights. You have to have a right to renew. And I will say right now that there's going to be a big effort by the real estate industry to substitute some RIBNY landlord bill for our bill. I mean, they've already proposed things like zoning and tax incentives. And this proposal of 1 year extension, they brought that back. If you can believe something that was written by the landlords and rejected 30 years ago, they dusted it off and brought it back. I mean, that's how pathetic today's legislators are. But none of these things give a right to renewal. And Sung Soo Kim, who I will mention throughout this, who's like the godfather of small business. He started the first small business service center in New York City. He was a chairman of 2 mayors' small business advisory boards, and he's very clear that unless you give these businesses the right to renewal, they're all going to disappear in New York City.
And what's been the position of Mayor de Blasio?
Well, he's a special case.
Okay.
We've gone from excitement and joy and proud to know him, to viewing him as probably, in 30 years, the most pathetic, unethical, immoral politician ever for our cause. Now, he may be progressive on a lot of things, the education and housing, a lot of factors, but not when it comes to economics. And he sold these people out, all of these businesses. And I'll start off by saying the first time we came into contact with him was in 2008. We reintroduced our bill and we streamlined it. When the recession occurred, we knew that now was the time to save these businesses, to regulate the landlords, because if your economy is in danger, the last thing you want is any business to go out of business. So surely the politicians will pass this bill. So we were convinced. So we introduced it. We streamlined it so it was in conjunction with what every person in New York City has today in a contract, which is a agreement to go to arbitration if there's dispute. Your cell phone, that contract, Wall Street, sports, we all know about sports, but it's spread all over the country that today, if you have a dispute with somebody, you go to arbitration.
Except in this area.
Except for the landlords in New York. So we thought it would be an easy process. And so what happened was we started holding forums, and Bill de Blasio showed up at every one. He was a council member running for public advocate. And especially the immigrant ones, because the immigrant community owned the majority of small businesses, but they didn't know Bill de Blasio from Brooklyn. Tall, white guy, didn't fit in at all. And yet he grabbed the issue. He saw the issue, the importance of it. And I tell you, his speeches on behalf of this bill. He was a sponsor of this bill, but he was a champion of promoting it. And every time that we had a forum in Queens, the Chinese, the Hispanics in Washington Heights, Bill de Blasio would show up and make incredible speeches.
In support.
In support.
So, okay.
And I'll tell you one.
What happened?
I'll tell you one that I was there at Jetro Foods is the wholesaler for the small bodegas and grocery stores, and they're located throughout the different boroughs. And Bill de Blasio came to one in the Bronx, and he addressed about 85 to 90 Hispanic bodega owners. And when they were finished, they endorsed him, and they made signs supporting Bill de Blasio. And for the first time ever, they put up signs in their windows. Please vote for Bill de Blasio. He's going to save our jobs, and he's going to save our businesses. And it was in Spanish. And he gave an unbelievable speech against the extortion, that if he was elected, he was going to stop it. He was outraged. He gave a speech about how good this bill was and that these people had a right to protection for their investment.
Sure.
Everything was perfect.
Then he gets elected.
Well, let me just say one thing before that. We got a really lucky break, the merchants, that in 2009, the chairman of the Small Business Committee was named David Yassky. And he was from Brooklyn. And he was also running for office, controller. And up to this time, Mayor Bloomberg had established an organization called the Small Business Service Agency, which was supposed to service small businesses. This was an agency just for small businesses. Well, the problem was nobody there had ever owned a small business. And the problem also was it was pure real estate. And they started setting up business improvement districts bids, which were made up of property owners and banks. And they were adding fuel to the fire. They were welcoming franchises in, and they weren't standing up for the businesses. They were not a voice for the small businesses, and especially the immigrants businesses. So they had no voice there. So along came the message that the Small Business Service Center was giving David Yassky and his committee was that everything is fine. We have all these wonderful programs. Call us. We're there to help you. We have Startup New York. We have Grow Your Business. We have all these wonderful programs. So small businesses are in great shape under the Bloomberg administration. The truth is that they were covering up all of this extortion, rent gouging, and the horrors of being a small business owner when your lease expires in New York City. They were covering it up. So David Yassky, he also went to a Jetro. And he went there to meet him, and he was startled when they started talking about the extortion and month-to-month leases and how terrible it was. Their future was in doubt. And he said, I don't know anything about this. I'm hearing from the administration that things are great. And everybody's saying you're being lied to. So David Yassky turned to the president of a new Hispanic chamber, a U.S. Latin Chamber of Commerce, and he asked him, do a study, an independent study of Hispanic businesses and all businesses, not just bodegas, but doctors and everybody. I want to know what really is going on in New York City. So he did a study, and it was earth-shattering. He spent $80,000. It took a long time to do it, and it was done right. It was one-on-one with the business owners, and the questions were exactly right. Like, are you planning on growing your business? Why? Why not? List the reasons. Have you laid somebody off? Why did you lay him off? List the reasons. They went through all of these questions about the real state of the small business, and it was earth-shattering. And it was the result of this thing was 53% of the businesses were at risk of closing. 1/3 were being extorted. Wow. 85% had no plans to grow, and the reason was all the same: the rents. and the lease renewal process, which they had no control over. And it was all the same thing. And the laying off, like 65% laid off people because of their rent. They couldn't pay the landlord and pay their wages or the workers. So David Yassky was the first worker, the first politician to go on record to say that the small businesses are in a crisis. He used the word crisis. The first time in 25 years that somebody went on record from the government.
Give us an idea of how many small businesses close a year.
Well, this will surprise you, but the best record for closing of businesses are the New York City courts, commercial courts. They issue what they call warrants to vacate. And that's when the landlord sues to vacate. If they issue a warrant, they give it to the marshal. And maybe some of you have seen little yellow signs on a door. Yeah. They go in. Well, they issue, if you can believe this number, under de Blasio, under Mayor Bloomberg, his last year was 485 warrants to vacate per month. Now, under de Blasio, it has grown to 542 per month. Now, that means, according to Mr. Kim, who spent 3 days a week in the courts for 30 years, he said for every business who fights it in court, 5 don't. So he said the actual number per month of businesses that close, probably between 1,000 to 1,200, conservatively, every month in New York City.
And the number of workers
associated is 8 per store.
Close. Okay.
So that's 8,000 jobs a month are lost in New York City. And yet they could stop everything tomorrow. Tomorrow they could stop everything, but they won't do it. They won't pass this bill. But I want to back up for a second to show you the politics involved, the power of real estate. David Yassky, when he said that this is a crisis, he was followed immediately by Bill de Blasio, who used the word, this is a crisis. We must save our businesses. They were using the word save and survival, and our businesses will become extinct. And David Yassky held a hearing on the bill on June 29th, 2009, on our bill. And it was at that hearing that Councilwoman James, who's now public advocate, all these people came, and David Yassky started the hearing off by saying to the mayor's people, there is no option to do nothing. If we continue this, we're going to lose all our businesses, and they're the ones who create the jobs. So I want to tell you right now, there's no option. We're going to find a solution to save these businesses. And I want to hear alternatives. If you don't like this bill, the Small Business Job Survival Act, I want to hear why, and I want to hear alternatives. And that's how that thing started off. And we ended up at the end of the hearing, and we won the hearing. There was no opposition to the bill. 32 council members, including every member of the Small Business Committee, were sponsors of the bill. And David Yassky stood up at the end and said, the cornerstone of saving the businesses, to stop the closing, is this bill.
Right.
And so everybody thought, well, that's it. They're going to vote on it and pass it, and that's going to be it. The Speaker's office stopped a vote on the bill, and they claimed vaguely that the bill has legal issues. The bill has, it's your classic legal roadblock, but here's the problem that they have. At the hearing, there was no testimony from the real estate lawyers that the bill had any legal problems. All of the legal issues about the bill were resolved 30 years ago, and the bill was stamped, approved, perfectly legal. The city has a right to enact it, and they went ahead and voted on the bill. But now, 30 years later, they're denying a vote on the same committee. They're denying a vote.
On grounds that?
They made up.
Illegal.
No, they made up.
Shenanigans, yeah.
They made it. They just said the bill has legal issues.
Legal issues, right.
And
Okay.
they were very vague.
Got
Right. It was a lie.
Right.
But you know what? They needed to do that to protect. The mayor was up for re-election, and and the mayor, the speaker, they gave the orders. We can't embarrass the Bloomberg administration for being, and you can quote me on this, the most anti-small business government in the history of New York City. I mean, they literally created these bids, which are property owners, banks, organizations. They're not small business organizations. They disguise them as small business organizations, but they're not. And everything about them is a fraud. They claim, well, we're going to rejuvenate an area. Well, what they do is they go into an area that the merchants themselves rejuvenated. They're vibrant, full of life. Yeah. And they go in there, they create a bid, and they pass all of the cost onto the businesses,
push them out.
And they push them out and bring in chains. Right. It's one of the biggest scandals ever. Now, so here we are.
Yeah, here we are.
2009. We have a solution to a crisis. And it is defined a crisis by the government themselves, not by Mayor Bloomberg. They're never going to say that there's a problem. By all of the leading candidates, John Liu, Bill de Blasio, Trish Jane, everybody. The speaker testified at this hearing that she was proud that the city council was standing up to special interests. She was proud to be a sponsor of this bill. So what happened? Today we can't get a hearing on the bill. Here's a solution. The problem has gotten worse. And last year, the Bronx led all the boroughs in court evictions, which means this speculation is just spreading all over. They're going into every poor neighborhood, looking to buy and flip and wheel and deal and make money. It's gotten worse. There's no question about it. Extortion's gotten worse. Rents have gone sky high. I mean, nobody's safe in business today. And yet, the solution, which just a few years ago was supported by 32 members of the council and the entire committee as the only real solution to save these businesses, can't get a hearing today. Now, how is that possible? When the mayor was a sponsor and a champion, the speaker was a sponsor and a champion.
Well, you tell us.
All right, well,
why is this not happening? And what can people organizing?
What's happened is that the real estate industry, RIBNY, has literally bought our politicians. Now, they will allow them, and what confuses a lot of people is there's a lot of our elected officials come from backgrounds of being activists, come from backgrounds with a history of progressive attitudes. And yet, when they get into government, everything changes when it comes to economic policy and when it comes to real estate. The real estate industry will give these people money, and they don't care about many of the social issues. They don't care about crime. They do what you want to do, education, do whatever you want to do. But when it comes to our profits, no, you do what you're paid to do. And they disguise themselves. They have organizations like Jobs for New York. And then you look up Jobs for New York. Look, Jobs for New York. That sounds good. Jobs for New York. And you know what? It's all landlords giving money to RIBNY, the real estate industry of New York, who give money to these candidates in exchange for not doing anything about these rents. Because under our bill, by the way, under this bill, you no longer will have to pay your landlord's property taxes. Right now, people don't know this, but all of these commercial businesses pay their landlord's property tax on the whole building. It's a ripoff of the highest magnitude. But anyway, so what they've done is they've gone to all of these candidates who used to be progressive, and they've told them, We will give you money, we'll give you support, but when it comes to economic policy, you keep intact the Bloomberg policy. Now, Mayor de Blasio, he told everybody, the first thing I'm going to do is take us in a new direction from Mayor Bloomberg. He didn't. What he did was he expanded Bloomberg's small business economic policy of favoring the real estate. And that's exactly what he's done. They have poured more money into creating a network of community organizations, giving them money, of more bids, of more business chambers, everybody, to not explain to the people.
Smoke and mirrors.
Well, it's partly smoke and mirrors because they create phony or worthless programs that sound good, stimulate, come to network, come to workshops for small businesses, and then what they are is useless programs. Come to get a loan. Well, who needs a loan? When you're a month-to-month tenant, you can't pay your rent, and you're going to go get a loan. It's all a network that they've created. But part of this network is to cover up completely the consequences to the community.
Right.
If the community knew what these guys have done about eliminating the pathway for jobs, about raising the prices for the seniors, kicking out all of the affordable businesses that they could...
and that's what you're doing. That's what you're doing. And what is the political process that you're seeking to develop, to counteract, as you were mentioning about Bernie Sanders, for example?
Right. What we're asking the people to do is to understand, first and foremost, who is responsible. When a business, your favorite business, goes out, don't hold the landlord responsible. Don't protest and send petitions to the landlord. It's a mistake. That's what they want. The person that's responsible is the elected official who refuses to support a solution that will regulate the landlord, that could stop that completely, the loss of the closing of the businesses. And they know it. They've remained silent, or they've supported phony programs, or they've created bids which all give them political cover. Or look at me, I'm a friend of small business. I've got this program and I did this workshop. Well, guess what? You are not a friend of small business. If you remain silent and you take the landlord's money and you keep the public in the dark that there's a solution that would have saved the jobs, that would have saved the businesses, that would have kept the costs down, you're no friend of the small business. And you know what? You're not progressive. And you know what? You're not a friend of the community. You are a political fraud. And that's the problem, is that these people who claim to be progressive, who are going to change and support progressive legislation, they may, when it comes to just about everything, but not the real estate, and not economics. Bloomberg's people, his policy, you know what it is? It's a Republican trickle-down economics that was started by Giuliani, but really expanded under Bloomberg, and that has been expanded under de Blasio. That's the economic policy of New York City. It is pure Republican trickle-down economics.
So are there progressives, so-called progressives out there that you do support? And what about this bill?
Well, here's the bill. Let me give you a status on the bill.
Status on the bill, exactly.
The bill has 27 sponsors.
Right now?
Right now, today, which is enough to pass it if there was a vote.
All right.
In New York City, sponsorship means zip, nothing. It's in the hands of the speaker and it's in the hands of the mayor. They control what gets passed, and a lot of people who take money from the real estate industry sponsor our bill. And we know they have absolutely no interest whatsoever of promoting the bill or passing the bill. They just want to tell the people, I sponsor the Small Business Job Survival Act.
But they could keep it from even being debated.
Let me tell you, they won't even, we don't even have an elected official that'll actually stand in front of an empty store saying we need at least an honest hearing.
Incredible.
I mean, let me tell you,
Yeah.
I'm not exaggerating. I've been.
I believe you. Yeah,
No, I'll make this statement, and I won't be exaggerating, that I started off in 1984 dealing with these people, and I thought that these guys were so corrupt, but there was a handful of mostly women, Ruth Messenger, Miriam Friedlander, Carol Greitzer, Carol Maloney. There was a bunch of women. Stanley Michaels was the one guy, the few guys. Later on, there was Sal Albanese. There were always some progressives that would stand up to the speaker and stand up to an issue. We don't have that today. This so-called progressive caucus.
Not a one.
No, have you heard anybody? Have you heard anybody say that it is disgraceful? How many?
No.
Now, what is needed? Well, first and foremost is we need the community to really confront their elected official of why won't they even give a hearing to this bill, even if they don't sponsor it. These businesses deserve at least hope. And the only way they're going to get hope is with a hearing, an honest hearing. What is the best solution to stop the closing? That's number one. Number two is to tell these elected officials, do not support one of these real estate Trojan horses as a substitute, because they will pass something that will keep everything the status quo. And that'll be the end of it. That'll be the end of the bill. That'll be the end of everything. Now, if that's the starting point, is they have to confront their elected official. Now, the second thing that they can do, start running honest people who will stand up to the real estate industry, who will not take the real estate's money, who will absolutely not take who have the courage to stand up to the speaker and say, listen, this is the right thing to do. This is the right thing to do, to do what David Yassky has. Bill de Blasio, you know what he went, the greatest flip in the history of New York City politics on this issue of small businesses and jobs and immigrants, because there's so many of them. He went from the crisis of extortion and rent gouging and short leases, and now Bill de Blasio, if you ask his administration, the talking point is that their biggest problem is red tape, too many tickets. Yeah. This is their problem. And we say, shame on you. Absolutely shame on you for selling out these people during a crisis. See, there's a difference, is that one day you stand up there and say, this is a crisis, these people will not survive, and here's a solution. The next day you say, what crisis? Their problem is lack of loans or red tape, and I'm doing something about it.
And can the community get in touch with you in some way so that their voice could be heard?
If you log on to, there's a petition there.
Okay. That's the step that can be taken.
We have a petition that's geared to the speaker, because she can stop this tomorrow. The speaker could hold a hearing tomorrow, and which is amazing. She sponsored the bill. She testified to the bill. She was proud that the city council was holding a hearing, was proud that the city council was going to stand up, and now today she will not even have a hearing.
So if you get enough voices contacting you, this could change.
Yeah, go savenycjobs.org. First thing is first, confront your elected official. Don't accept any excuses. It's simple. What have you done to stop the closing of our businesses and to save our jobs? And why won't you give this solution, which gives rights to these businesses, a hearing? Don't you want the small business owners to have some protection and some rights when their leases are up? It's a simple question. Right. It's either yes or no. And the second part is, start looking for people to run for office who are true progressives and not under the thumb of the real estate industry, who won't take their money. And people, by the way, log on to the Campaign Finance Board, and you look up your elected official, and look at who's giving them money and what's shameful. I'll tell you, to me it's really...
In our last minute. Yeah.
Okay, what's really shameful is that they don't have to take this real estate money. In New York, if you're an incumbent, it's almost impossible to be beat. You have a 6-to-1 matching fund. You have all the advantages and everything going for you. Why do you need to take these people's money and allow all these businesses to be destroyed and all the jobs, and you have your community suffer the consequences because you need all this real estate money?
Well, this seems like an issue that we could all get behind. Steve,
right,
you've got incredible energy. This has been incredibly informative, and we've got to get this bill passed. And when we do, you promise to reopen the Fertile Earth?
Oh, I don't know about that.
Or something. Thank you, Steve, so much. It's been an
yeah.
incredible show, and thank you so much for all the information and the energy you've given us.
I hope that people take charge of their communities.
Please do. We
Don't
really
depend upon the language and the actions of your elected officials, because they've really let you down, all of them.
Absolutely. Thank you again for watching the Radical Imagination. This is Jim Vrettos. We'll see you again next week.